Welcome to Not What I Thought. I'm Erika.
I'm Yolanda.
And I'm Becca. We're therapists, entrepreneurs, and perfectly imperfect humans.
We first met during a business owner retreat where we became fast friends because we're not afraid to be real and ask the hard questions about life. What we thought it would be like, how messy it actually is, and the courage it takes to create the life we want.
We continue to build our friendship and personal growth through our own retreats. We find the deepest connection in sharing our struggles and finding what we have in common rather than what divides us.
We're breaking down hard topics on our podcast and together have conversations about what it takes to find real talk, real support, and real rest for professional women. We're glad you're here. Join us on your favorite podcast platform.
All right. So today I wanted to talk about how having a successful trip / family vacation doesn't always change the narrative.
Oh.
Yay.
Yay. Okay.
So little context.
Oh.
Yeah, Yolanda's like, there's a story here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a little context. I've been in a relationship with my husband for 21 years. And in that time, we have discovered how much we love to travel and have new experiences, try new things, go new places. And that's become a big part of, I think, the value in our relationship. And we love doing that with other people. So we've traveled a lot with my parents, with his mom, with his sister. And I have never in the 21 years traveled with my father-in-law and his wife or seen either of them travel.
Mm-hmm.
So one day my father-in-law was at my house. We're pretty close. We have a good relationship. And I was just telling him this random story about how I will never again drive on the Las Vegas Strip, which I did randomly after one of our trips to Utah. And my
Mm-hmm.
flight was out of Vegas. So I, took my rental car and I drove to the hotel that I like to go to. And y'all, the Las Vegas Strip is like 10 lanes across and there's people everywhere. So
Oh.
it was horrible.
Yikes.
And so I don't know how we got on that topic, but I was randomly telling him this story. And about 2 weeks later, he says, you know what we should do? I was like, I have no idea. He said, I want to renew my vows with my wife. It'll be their 25th wedding anniversary in Vegas. So I think we should all go and do like the whole wedding chapel, Elvis coming in, like the whole thing. And so I was like, I would love to do that. This sounds like the best thing ever. And I
Mm.
was like, this is never going to happen. Like this trip will never come to fruition. Well, the trip did come to fruition. We went 2 weeks ago. um, Me, my husband, my father-in-law, his wife, and my sister and her partner. And we just had like the best time. It was
Mm.
so great. I don't know if I ever laughed so hard in my life as seeing
Mm.
very interesting looking Elvis like officiate and sing and pull all of us into it. And nobody knew what to do or what to say, but it was great. And there were like logistic things like they haven't flown on a plane in over 20 years, right? And like didn't quite know the like procedures
Mhm.
at the airport and don't
Mhm.
really understand Uber or how that works and things like that. So there were these um intricacies, I guess you could say, to the planning of the trip and execution of the trip that were fine. And we didn't really have any big problems or anything, just kind of, you know, had to explain and, don't worry about it, just follow me. I'll take you where we're
Mhm.
going, sort of a thing.
Mhm.
Um, I planned most of it mainly because that's something I like to do and nobody else really wants to do it. So that all worked out just fine.
Mhm.
And so, of course, on the last day, we're going back to the airport. And for my husband, he's like, we had a great time. When's our next trip? Where are we going next? And we're really met with this very like non-committal, I would say almost
Mhm.
resistant feedback discussion
Mhm.
to this idea of like, we're going to go on another trip. Uh, so I think that was the piece of like what we didn't expect. And so
Mhm.
even then I kind of challenged like, well, like it's kind of stressful. We're trying to get home. It's travel day. It's a long day, blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah. Like maybe give it a minute, you know? So we followed up on
Mhm.
conversation yesterday and still with the resistance and like complete non-committal to, you know, we're going to go somewhere again at some point
Mhm.
in the future. Um, so that's kind of what I've been sitting with, this idea of like,
Mhm.
man, we had this really cool, great experience that everybody said was just amazing. And my sister-in-law said it was one of her favorite trips we've all ever done. And,
Mhm.
um, but then here we are and like, eh, maybe
Mhm.
not, probably not into a future trip.
Mhm.
It sounds to me like there's a sort of unspoken expectation there that if we had a good time, everyone should want to do it again.
For sure. Like I've been thinking kind of through that, like the myth of, I don't know, the proof of experience, right? Like we've done this thing, everybody had a wonderful time. So of course you're just gonna want to do it again. Let's go do it next year. Sort of an idea, which I think is like a reasonable expectation, but definitely I can see how that won't always happen in reality.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Um, they take other trips outside of this one? I mean, you
They,
said they hadn't been on, yeah, yeah. So it's not, in addition to, um, hey, wasn't this great? You're also like going up against decades of we don't travel.
exactly.
Mm,
Exactly. And not
mm.
fully understanding the barriers to travel or to maybe new
Why they,
experiences. Yeah.
yeah, why that is the case for them. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is something I'm hoping eventually we can unlock in our conversations.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's something I've been thinking through as well. We definitely my father-in-law is definitely a very regimented
Hmm.
person. It is what it is. These are the
Hmm.
traditions. We can't change it.
Hmm.
The Thanksgiving turkey must be his
Yeah.
way, or you know, you're gonna be hungry. So that's
Hmm.
I get that. So we do have our other traditions with them. We always go to the Renaissance Festival with them every year. Um,
Hmm.
and I guess there's maybe this little bit of like comparison in that with all of our other sides and, sects of the family, we do lots of things with them. And so it was
Hmm.
really joyful for me to have a new experience with,
Hmm.
my father-in-law and his wife.
Yeah, something that wasn't so routine and fit into the ongoing mold of the way that you've experienced each other over the years. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That is disappointing.
Becca's got her question face on.
Yeah, I'm thinking about like, because there's some of this that is still just unknown, right? Like, what a year from now will you have different insight on what this trip was and what it meant, and whether anyone would be open to something similar, or if your relationship changes long term in a good way because of what you did together, right?
Hmm.
Um, but I wonder, just for right now, like, what are the things that are kind of stirring up in you about like, hey, this isn't, that wasn't what I thought that it was going to be.
Hmm.
Like, is there frustration? Is there judgment? Is it sadness? Like,
Hmm.
Yeah, probably a little bit of all those for sure. The disappointment,
yeah.
um, a little bit of sadness, maybe more for my husband because
Hmm.
this feels really important to him to share this type of experience
Yeah.
with his
Hmm.
father that is well, I don't know how much I should say about his stuff, but I'm sure that's, some sort
Hmm.
of childhood wound
Hmm.
of like, I would like to experience this thing, but if it wasn't
Hmm.
something my father-in-law wanted to do, it was like pretty much an automatic no, which is sad.
Right. Hmm.
No, right? And so it's like asking you to do something that might be outside of your comfort zone, but that willingness to say yes or to explore it, I think is important.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and sad for me too, but I think mainly I'm sad for him.
Mhm.
Um, maybe a little bit of judgment if I'm being completely honest,
Mhm.
and less about whatever these barriers are to, trying something new or maybe doing a different type of shared experience or traveling in general. But more the lack of clarity, I suppose, in how we're having those conversations, because it's very unclear as to like, is it a financial thing? Is it a routine? Is it
Mhm.
she doesn't want to take off from work, which probably
Mhm.
is part of it. You were overwhelmed, by the travels, too many decisions. Yeah, I mean, I could come up with like lots of reasons, but I that was these are all stories
Mhm.
I'm making up when
Mhm.
the conversations have been attempted, and there's opportunity there to clarify that.
And the conversations when they're attempted don't really go anywhere. Has that
Yeah,
been the experience so far? Mhm.
so far.
Mhm.
Sorry. Well, we did learn that apparently we can't travel to any blue states. So
Oh.
we
Well, there's a little bit of clarity right
got that one. There's some
there.
clarity.
Oh, yeah.
Good times with that. But
Mhm.
We're dangerous over here. Stay away.
Mhm. But
California.
I mean, this might cross the line, and pastoral is in effect. Um, because what is standing out for me is the fact that you said that this is a close relationship that you have.
Mhm.
So what part feels close? I think is what I'm curious about. What about the relationship feels close?
Yeah, for me with my father-in-law.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, I mean, he's very reliable. He'll always show
Mhm.
up if you ask.
Mhm.
He
Mhm.
does do a really good job with our kids and interacting with them.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay.
he's probably just he's different than my dad in that, he
Mhm.
will be there if you ask him to be there.
Mhm. 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 Mhm.
Yeah,
So that closeness sounds like it's cemented in kind of his regularity, I guess, for lack of a better way of his routineness.
sure. His routinist is to
Yeah.
our advantage, but also, I don't know, our willingness to like joke with each other, which is kind of a double-edged
Uh-huh.
sword, I imagine. Because in
Yeah.
their family, that's how you show love. You tease people.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But I got a thick skin, so
Uh-huh.
gonna make it.
This situation is reminding me of something that happened with me and my sister-in-law a long time ago. She was very crafty and into sewing and quilting and things. And we had fairly recently moved to Southern California. And I had heard about the fun adventure of the Garment District in LA. And we had gone down there, and it's just like, several blocks worth of stores and storefronts and warehouses where you can go
Mhm.
buy bulk stuff, and not like
Mhm.
a Joann's fabric or anything. Like,
Mhm.
this is where people go who are like designers or who are
Mhm.
building costumes for, movies and TV shows. And like, it just is
Mm.
so many, an overwhelming amount of options, but like really cool, right? So I thought of my sister-in-law and I told her about this, like, oh, this is so cool, thinking that it was something we would be able to go do together. That like, hey, maybe next
Mhm.
time you're in town, we can go. And I was really looking hard for ways that I could bond with her.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Um, and so I was excited that I had something that was like, oh, this is an experience she will love. And I could show it to her and we could bond, right? And then I found out later. And I don't recall anymore how exactly I found out, but I do remember that she wrote about this experience on her blog. But she had come to
Mhm.
Southern California and gone to the Garment District on my recommendation with her mom.
Mm,
And like that was fine, right? But there was this little bit
mhm,
of like, oh, I had thought that this was going to be a thing that would bring us closer together, that we would do
mhm,
together, and we did not have shared expectations on that.
Yeah.
So I think there's a similarity here in a hope of how a certain experience might deepen a bond,
mhm,
and then finding out that the other person doesn't see it the same way or wouldn't want to repeat that or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And in your story, I'd be curious if she was thinking like, well, that's not really something Becca would like to do,
I
or
have no idea,
mm,
right? Like,
right. Yeah, who
mhm,
knows?
yeah.
But I think that definitely comes up in these scenarios where we're like, oh, this is going to be just the best, yeah, bonding experience, or we're going to have a great shared experience and memories forever, and it's going to change the
mhm,
trajectory of our relationship and that sort of thing. And it's hard when that's not quite how it pans out. And in some ways, it makes me reflect on our travels together, the three of us, because we've
mhm,
traveled many times together, and I think the willingness of each of us to try something that maybe isn't what we thought of first or suggested, right? But we're like, yeah, we'll give that thing a try.
Sure.
You you know, Erica, you saying that just really like I don't what's the word I'm looking for? Really lit up how I don't it just made it land for me how frustrating this must feel for you because it's been my experience in our travels that you so much are willing to step out of your comfort zone,
Yeah.
like above and beyond what I do for sure. Um, and so it totally makes sense to me that it feels super frustrating that you have this idea of the potential of all of these fun things that you could do with your in-laws, and that feels stymied because they cannot or won't or whatever. They're not able to do that.
Sure. Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. That was a commitment I made to myself a long time ago
Yeah,
in going to retreats or going to do different things. Like if that's on the agenda, okay, like I'll give it a try. Even if I'm
yeah,
like, that sounds kind of terrible, but then you go and do a thing and you're
yeah,
like, oh, that was actually
yeah.
really fun. Or now I know, breaking bowls
I
that
think.
we talked about in a different episode. Maybe that's not. um,
Yeah.
I just think there's so much value in life in trying things that push you outside of your comfort zone. And I think
Mhm.
experience realizing that like even that aspect of it is not a value for everybody.
Right. Mhm.
And so how do you find maybe new ways to deepen relationships or connect with people when,
Right.
that's going to look very
When
different.
that's limited. Mhm. Yeah. I just know those situations in my life where I'm like, "Why does this feel so weighty?" And I realize it's because I feel like that's such a strong value for me, and for it not to be for this other person, um, yeah, adds that layer. And yeah, what might fun and unique times look like when this piece is such a limiting factor or feels that way right now? Mm,
And then I'm calling back to another conversation that we had about friendships and changing in relationships and wondering like as we look at these, family stuff in particular, like can we find a place to feel comfortable with this is as close as we get? Or kind of
mm,
these are the parameters of what I can and can't experience with that person and may like deal with the disappointment that is there
mhm,
at the
mhm,
same time as we appreciate the closeness that is also there.
mhm.
Right? So like you can have a really wonderful relationship with your father-in-law and appreciate all the things that he gives, and that this, one thing doesn't have to take all the rest of that away. And maybe it is a one-time experience that we did this travel and it was beautiful and it was the most fun trip we've ever taken together, and that's a standalone, not part of a new tradition that we have.
Yeah.
Well, and navigating through the grief that comes up when we realize that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking of how dynamics have shifted slightly in my relationship with family members. And it does give you that little taste of, oh, this could be so good. And you take that to its limit, and then you kind of bump up against that limit, and you're like, oh, but there's still more. And yet this is the limit. Yeah.
And I think because of how our brains work, we are always going to be finding those limits, just because our
Mm,
brains are always capable of imagining something more, different,
Mhm.
better, bigger than what we currently have. And that's just what human brains do. And so there
mhm,
there kind of is no point in our lives or our relationships where we have like reached the pinnacle of all that can happen. Our brain's always going to think of some other thing that we could
mhm,
do. Um,
mhm,
and so to be really happy in our lives, we have to figure out how we can live with that duality of being really content with what we have, while our brain is also capable of imagining something
mm,
better, deeper, different.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that idea. Kind of how I've been thinking about it is like bridging the gap between what you desire and what the other person is willing to give.
mhm, mhm. Finding that gray space, the more nuanced space of negotiation from the we. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I love that
Mm,
reminder, Becca, of this, just natural instinct to like dream of all that
mhm,
could be.
mhm. It, if I'll add, I think it kind of comes this conversation in some ways feels similar to our conversation with Becca about kind of friendships. And I do think that in these situations, that continuing to hold myself in warm regard and kind of make that distinction, like it's the, these they can have had a really good experience, and this doesn't necessarily change their way of being. Is probably something that I would have to remind myself on a regular basis if I were in your shoes, Erica.
Yeah, I love that reminder. That's something I've struggled with in the past, taking on sort of, I guess I used to call it like an inappropriate guilt, but
Mhm,
probably it was a little too much internalizing of like, if somebody else doesn't like the restaurant that I picked,
mhm,
be a very
mhm,
hard experience for me. Um,
mhm,
if they were complaining or the food wasn't right or
mhm,
something along those lines. Um, so yeah, separating myself from like, even in this case, I think everybody did enjoy the experience, but not wanting to do it
mhm,
again isn't like a rejection of me or the relationship.
mhm.
It's just maybe, well, hopefully we'll figure out what it is. But
Yeah,
I'm going to guess maybe it's not a value of the same value or priority, right, in their lives as it is in mine.
for sure. Sounds that way. Yeah. Hmm. Erica, what does your heart know to be true?
Um, my heart knows that my value for travel comes in the shared experiences and memories. And just because it's meaningful to me doesn't mean it's meaningful to everybody in the same way. So we all get to prioritize, our own values and where we want to spend our time and energy. I think reminding myself it's okay to feel like sad or disappointed. But that doesn't mean I
Mhm.
can't find other ways to connect with this particular
Mhm.
side of the family.
Mhm.
What about you, Becca? What does your heart know to be true?
My heart knows that there's lots of ways that we can connect with people, and that it's okay for us to experiment with new
Mhm.
things. And it's also okay to grieve when those new things didn't quite pan out the way that we wanted them to. And that we could hold both, that it being a beautiful experience and grateful for the experiment and a tinge of sadness to it too.
Mhm.
What does your heart know, Yolanda?
Um, my heart knows that at the end of the day, relationships are about being with the person that we're with and not who we deserve for them to be.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, we all get to be who we are. And the things that I feel are important for me. And that might look different from the things that someone else feels are important. And that there's still a lot of space in between those things that we can find ways of connecting, even though it might look different than what we hope.
Mm.
Here's to many more trips,
Yay!
just in
Tomorrow.
general. Yeah.
So many more
Yes.
trips tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Literally tomorrow. Yay. Yay.
We're so happy you've been listening to the podcast, and we want to make sure you love it. If there's a topic you want us to address, you have a question about one of our episodes, or you want to share your own Not What I Thought experience, we want to hear from you. Record a voice memo or email us at hello@notwhatithought.com.
Really, take out your phone now, record, send us a message.